Okay, welcome everyone to the October meeting of the Ottawa Centre, the RASC Ottawa Centre. Thanks for coming out. It's a very special meeting tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mike Moghadam. It's my pleasure to be the chair of this meeting tonight. We've got quite a show. It's a very full program tonight. It's very good. I think you'll enjoy it clearly as much as I have in putting the slides there, assembling the slides from our many fine speakers. The highlight of the night is we're honored to have Wilfred here, who's going to be talking about a traditional astronomy from the First Nations astronomy. So I'll introduce him in a second here. For those of you who haven't been here, and actually that's one thing I always like to talk about. So who's here is coming to this meeting the first time tonight? Okay, a couple of hands. Now, we've about a month and a half, I think it was August 11th, we set up the Ottawa Astronomy meetup group. How many of you are with the meetup group? Can you turn the lights back on again just for a sec, Chris? All right, I'm just curious. Okay, I don't know if a few of the same hands. So welcome. It's great to have you. And hope you enjoy the program tonight. So what we do is about halfway through the meeting. We've got a break, and during that break, we give away raffle tickets. So you come pick them up here. They actually come in a pair. You take one, you leave one, and at the end of the meeting, we've got a lot of astronomy-themed door prizes. And they're open to everyone who attends here. You don't have to be a member of the RASC. So I hope you stay till the end of the meeting, and we'll do the draw for door prizes. We have quite a few of them tonight, so you just when your number is drawn, you come up to the front and you pick your prize. As usual, regular features include Dave Chisholm is going to talk about what to expect to see in the Ottawa skies, nighttime skies. Pierre Martin, it's always a pleasure to have Pierre to talk about the Perseid meteor shower that occurred in August. Pierre's images are some of the finest you will see anywhere, and I'm sure that you'll agree once you've seen that. We've got a ton of observations from images and videos from members on, as I said in my note, on you know what. Obviously, there was a lot of activity with the Lunar Eclipse that we had just last Sunday. So you'll see some very fine images of people who didn't hang around Ottawa. Some of them actually went away from the cloud. So that's nice to see. And we've got a ton of recreational astronomy announcements as well, including weather permitting. We'll have another public stargazing session tomorrow. One thing we'd like to say at this time is welcome new members. To date, we have 45 new members. In the last month, we have Natasha, Jordan, Matthew, John, Bill, and Vincent. If you're here tonight, welcome. It's great to have you, and I hope we continue to make it something that you'll enjoy for the year and years to come. Normally at this time we've got members' announcements and members in the news. We don't have anything this month, which is very unusual, but we do have something very special. So we have to make a change to our agenda tonight. Normally we have Al Scott, who talks about a 10-minute astronomy news update, and he picks some newsworthy item that's happened in the last month, and he goes into some depth to explain it, well, Al can't make it tonight because he just had a baby boy. So congratulations to Al. A larger family. Okay, my next guest, it's a real honor here. I'm very excited about our next speaker. For some time now, many of you have asked me if I could invite someone from the First Nations to talk about First Nations astronomy. And I'm honored that Wilfred is joining us tonight. He flew in from Winnipeg today, so it was quite a trip for him. And he comes from the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, and he'll be talking about traditional Innu or Cree, the night sky and the origins of the Innu mythology. So this is going to be indeed a special evening for us. So some background about Mr. Buck. So he's a science facilitator with the Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Center. So where he has been for the past 9 years. He's traveled widely throughout Manitoba and Canada as well, where he has, and I just did a bit of a tally here, and I think I got most of them. He spoke at the Saskatchewan Summer Star Party in 2006 to a packed house. Then to the RAC general meeting, which was also held at the Saskatchewan Summer Star Party in 2009. And more recently, he spoke at the Toronto and Mississauga RAC centers in 2010. So I have to say I've heard countless positive comments about him. He's well received. He's injected humor into his talk, and people have told me he's been very engaging, so no pressure here. But everyone, please give a warm welcome to our special guest, Wilfred.
Thank you, Mike. Danse, du demmer op. Og på min idé, skal jeg til snigræsen. Og på skal jeg nå til. Greetings, my relatives. My name is Wilfred Buck. I'm from the Pascagoula Cree Nation. I'm a Cree, of course, in India, we call ourselves. And the name that my people know me by is Opomi Negede Tichigo. And the translation is, he has dreamt a dream and keeps it. And it's shortened to Dreamkeeper. So I'm honored to be here today to speak with you and some of the knowledge of my people. I'm honored to be allowed into Ottawa territory. And I want to thank our Creator for this day and for this life. So I've been invited here to speak to you about First Nations mythology, specifically Inanyo mythology, and pertaining to Atchakosuk, the stars. And so the presentation will be regarding some of the more common objects in the night sky, because a lot of cultures, one of the things our elders told us is that everybody in the northern hemisphere, prior to the coming of electric lights, went outside at night and looked up and saw the same stars. Therefore, every culture in the northern hemisphere understood about those stars. Every culture had their own connections to those stars. Every culture had their own teachings. Every culture had their own constellations. Every culture had their own mythologies. As I always tell my students when I go to speak with them about astronomy and Atchakosuk, is that everybody understood about the stars. Romans and Greeks were the lucky ones who got put into the school curriculum. But everybody understood about the stars. So, we'll begin. So this is an Inanyo mythology. For a lot of First Nations people, not only in Canada, but in North America and in Central America and South America, believe that the mythology says that we come from the stars. We originate from the stars. We are star people. So this is sort of like the beginning line of Battlestar Galactica. We are told that life, you know. But for Inanyo, my people, the mythology begins with beings called Kishigogak. Kishigogak, translated, are beings of energy, beings of light. And the mythology says that these Kishigogak, these beings of energy, they roamed the cosmos in search of knowledge, in search of new experience. And so in that process of doing that, there was things that they could not experience, things they could not understand. And one of them was living in a physical world, in a physical body, experiencing those physical things. And so the Gishikogak, beings of energy, they traveled the galaxies looking for new experiences. And one in particular was traveling in this quadrant of space, I guess we could say. And she came across this spatial anomaly. My people call this Pagwangisik, the hole in the sky. And it's known as the Pleiades. So in the sky, the Pleiades, we associate that with a hole in, basically a hole in the sky, a spatial anomaly. And Atchakosuk, she was traveling around, she saw this hole in the sky, and she looked in that hole in the sky, and she saw a planet, and that planet was, was our Mother Earth. And she saw the physical beings on there, and she decided she wanted to come here and experiencing what physical beings experience. So she needed help to come down through that hole in the sky. And so she approached another Kishikogak named Gugumanagasis. Gugumanagasis is grandmother spider. Here, I'll even use this thing. Grandmother spider. She sits right on the Milky Way. If you see that W in the sky, Cassiopeia, which sits right on the Milky Way. I always tell my students, you see that W in the sky, it's very important. It stands for Wilfred. they know, and they remember it all the time. Hey, that's Wilfred up there. And so Kishikogak, Gugumanagasis, Atchakosuk, the Kishikogak, she approached Gugumanagasis, and she asked for her aid in coming down from that hole in the sky to reach Earth. So grandmother spider sent a single strand of webbing through that hole in the sky, and the Atchakosuk came down to Earth. And in that Earth, when she arrived on Earth, she took on a physical form. So you can see grandmother spider sitting right on the Milky Way here. This is her head right here, and her front leg comes out like this, and her other leg comes out this way, and then her body sits right here. And she sent a single strand of webbing through that hole in the sky and lowered Atchakosuk down. And when Atchakosuk came down, she was very grateful, and she brought with her a gift. And that gift she brought was Atchakosuk, Hahakup is the blanket. Atchakosuk, the star blanket. So she brought with her this star blanket, and it was given to all the nations of the world, this star blanket. And for my people, it's a very sacred gift. The first star blanket had 7 points to represent those 7 visible stars there. And this blanket was painted on bear hides, buffalo hides, moose hides, all kinds of hides. And with the introduction of cloth, they tried to sew a 7-pointed star, and they found it took quite a long time to do. And so a 7-pointed star is not commonly seen. Nowadays, the star blankets you'll see will always have 8 points, 12 points, 6, always even numbered. And that only because it's easier to produce an even pointed star, and it takes less time, and you can do it quite fast, because you can fold the halves out and equal them out against each other. With a 7-pointed star, you can't do that. So that's why the star blankets nowadays have 8 points, 12 points, 16 points, 32 points, so on and so forth, always even number. But the original ones had 7 points. And most of the time you see these when a baby is born, they'll bring a small star blanket. Or when a person passes on over his casket, a 7-pointed star blanket is placed. So this is Atchakosuk. This is the, well, I brought my rattle with me. I was supposed to sing an opening song. So maybe I'll stop and I'll do that. I usually bring my drum, but I had some other stuff I had to carry on, so my drum took up too much room. So I just brought my rattle. So this song is, whoa, Jimi Hendrix. That's an electronic rattle. So this song is, I guess, an introduction song and a welcoming song. It goes like this. I'll give it the old Hollywood beat. Hey ho, are ya? Hey ho, are ya? That's nice. Okay, now. Hey yo, hey yo, hey yo. Well, maybe I won't sing it then. Okay, I'm sorry. So I guess I won't sing it. I got too many microphones here. Okay, so sorry about that. Anyway, to continue on. So, what you're looking at right here is, of course, our Milky Way. And for my people, there's a lot of stories about this Milky Way. Sometimes it's called Atchakosuk, the River of Souls. Sometimes it's called Mygan, the Wolf's Path. Sometimes it's called Niska, the Goose's Path, or Nipaneshisak, the Summer Bird's Path. So this year is Niska. Niska is the goose. And this is it can be equated to a Cygnus, the swan, in Roman Greek mythology, sitting right outside the Milky Way. The reason they call this Niska, and they call that the Milky Way Niska Meskina, was because in the fall and in the springtime, just as it got dusky, the the Milky Way was orientated in a north-south direction. And as hunters were coming in the spring hunt and in the fall hunt, late at night, and when it was starting to get in the dark, they'd hear the whistle of the wings when the geese were flying. And sometimes they'd look up in the sky and they'd see that silhouette moving across the background of the Milky Way. And the elders say this is the path that the migratory birds follow when they went south and they come back north. So that's why they call it Niska Meskinau or Nipaneshisak Meskinau, the summer bird's path. So, as I was stating before, that all cultures under the sky knew about the stars, wasn't only Romans and Greeks. The other thing is that all cultures understood about those things. They philosophized about things. They came up with some kind of with all types of mythologies that made sense of their world. So every culture knew about the stars. Every culture had their own philosophers, diplomats, astronomers, inventors, doctors, etc., etc., etc. No one culture had everything cornered. My people, the Inyo is what we call ourselves, the people in the east. On the plains, they call themselves Niaho, which is Cree also. It's both forms of Cree. When we talk about the Gishikugak, Mishwa, Atchakosuk, Pagwangisik, these all require physical abstract thought. These are all philosophies. These things are immense understanding. It takes immense understanding. People passed it on these things. People dreamt about these things. People philosophized on these things. They talked about these things. They had big debates about these things. And the conclusions were drawn, logical assumptions were made. So if you look, when we talk about life, my people say, Bema Tishuan. Bema Tishuan refers to life, but equated to English as life. Bema Tishuan, when broken down into its root words, one of the things it talks about is Tish. Tish is the connection we have with all our female relatives that have gone before us and that are going in front of us. And what that says is that we should honor Hiskweowak. We should honor the women. We should honor these women that are the ones who are responsible for us being here, as men especially. And one of the things our elders go on to say is that every ceremony that my people have, its central philosophy is to honor Ishkwel, honor the women. So when you think about life and how immense that life is, especially when you're sitting outside looking at that sky, and you see the awesomeness of it. We talk about the micro and the macro, how big and how small the things can get. And one of the elders said that there's never ending to how big you can go when you look out into that sky, and it's never ending how small you can go when you look back from yourself down to every little last living thing. So they thought about those things. And one of the examples I use is a quote from Crowfoot, was a Blackfoot Confederacy. He says, "What is life? Life is a flash of a firefly in the night. It is the breath of a buffalo in the wintertime. It is a little shadow which runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset." And this is quite astounding. Just speaking of life, how insignificant we are compared to that vastness of space, and compared to the awesomeness of the micro. So another group of constellations prominent, especially in the fall and winter skies, is this one here. This is Corona Borealis, of course. My people looked at this, and they saw a lot of legends about that. One, they called it Matutsan. Matutsan is the sweat lodge. The sweat lodge is in the sky. There's Corona Borealis right there. Matutsan, the word Matutsan, the root word is mato. Mato, to cry. So this is the crying for pity lodge, where we cry for pity. And again, this is the womb of the woman, representing the womb of the woman. But the sweat lodge is more representative of other things when you think about the vastness of space. One of the things our elders talk about is when you look at a sweat lodge, you can equate it to our little corner of the universe. And this, right in front of this, is a fire, a sweat lodge fire. The sweat lodge rocks, the sweat lodge fire. And in the winter sky, these are right across from each other. These are the Pleiades, and the Corona Borealis is right directly across, and right in between is the North Star. And in this line is the sacredness of life. So we look at that in the wintertime sky, we're reminded of Asiniawas' stone child and how he brought back the sweat lodge to us. This year is Pineasio. Pineasio is the Thunderbird. And the Thunderbird was very sacred to my people. The Thunderbird was the one who first brought sound to the people. It was the first one he was the one that brought fire to the people. He was the one that brought cleansing to the water, cleansing to the earth, cleansing to the air, cleansing to the plants. And this one in particular is called Nipin Pineasio, the summer Thunderbird. And he was in charge of all the ceremonies in the summer, plus all the cleansing of everything that was growing at that time. So very important that summer Thunderbird. To show you how important it is, look at this. This is a summer Thunderbird, convertible, 54. Very important. So not so obvious is Nipin Pineasio. Nipin Pineasio is a huge constellation in the sky. This constellation sits right on the Milky Way. And in the summertime, it comes up in the southern sky. And when it comes up, that's when we begin the Sundance ceremony, the Sundance season. The Sundance season starts in June and goes right till the end of August. By rough estimates, now they say there are over 5,000 Sundances held during the summer, all across North America, with an average of 10 to 20 dancers at each Sundance, and it's growing fast. So the people are coming back to Pineasio, the Thunderbird. So here he is in the sky, sitting right on the Milky Way, and he encompasses Ophiuchus, encompasses Libra, is a big, huge constellation, and that's a summer Thunderbird. Here's a Thunderbird song. See if I can do it. I'm going to get feedback. That's a Thunderbird song. It's a Sundance song. It comes from Saddle Lake, Alberta. Okay, I'm sorry again. And this song was given to me, and I had have the right to sing it. But this Thunderbird in particular was shown to me in a Sundance Lodge. And the elder, the one who gave me that song, his name is Noah Cardinal. And he's about 85, 88, somewhere around there. And he took me in that Sundance Lodge, and there's a particular spot, sacred spot in that Sundance Lodge, where a piece of grass is cut out, sawed, and it's smoothed out. And in that grass is like a diamond shape, and there's 4 representations of constellations in there. And one of them was that Thunderbird, and the other one was not a constellation, but it's grandmother moon. So these, for my people, are very, very sacred. These mean life for us. One of the things the old man said is that what's up there is mirrored down here. What's up there, we try to copy down here. We try to follow the path that's given to us by Creator. And one of the things is this here. If I can skip ahead here. You'll have to forgive me because I'm all over the place at times. But we'll get back to this. I just wanted to talk about this. Well, I guess it's not there. I'm in the wrong presentation. Anyways, I'll talk about this. So this year is called Shiguan. Shiguan, the word Shiguan is what we use for spring. And if we look at this, the root word for this is Shiguan, and this is called Shiguan. Shiguan is the rattle. The elders say that there's a rattle in the sky, and that rattle, part of it is the end handle of the end star on that handle of that constellation is the North Star, and then it curves around, and it encompasses Cepheus, the constellation Cepheus. So in the sky, it's anchored to the North Star, and it encompasses Cepheus. And this constellation, Shiguan, when it points to the east, the direct east, and around springtime it points in that direction, and just as it does it before the sun rises, there's 2 planets that rise up at a 45-degree angle. And when those 2 planets rise and this constellation is pointing directly at them, that signifies to us that spring has arrived. And the way the elders say is that it's at that time that the ice starts to melt. And when the ice melts, it doesn't melt from the top down, it melts from the bottom up. The water crystallizes the ice. And that's why if you see on the lakes, a lot of times all you'll see is the snow sitting on top of that. And that's the ice is, the water's crystallizing the ice. And when the water crystallizes the ice and the wind blows, you hear that sound. And that's the sound, our elders say, that tells everything to wake up, tells all the plants, tells all the birds, tells everything to wake up again. It's time to start a new cycle. And so we try to imitate that with this. We make Shiguan the rattle. All right, to continue on. So another constellation that we talk about, and we're grateful to have this mythology, is called Atchakosuk. Atchakosuk, of course, is the Little Dipper, Ursa Minor, and of course there's Polaris. For my people, when we look at this, we're reminded of how dogs came to human beings. At one point, we didn't have dogs. We didn't have dogs. And so in our camps at night, when we were sleeping, sometimes we'd be surprised, rudely awakened by something in the camp, or interlopers in the camp. And there was no alarms to tell us that something was coming or something was in the camp. And so Mygan the wolf, he felt sorry for us. So Mygan is represented in this mythology as the North Star. So wolf felt sorry for us, he sent 2 puppies to live with us. So when the wolf sent 2 puppies, Atchakosuk is the coyote. The coyote sent 2 pups to live with us. And when the when the fox saw the coyote and the wolf sending puppies, Magasu decided, well, I better send puppies too. So there were 6 pups that came to live with the human beings, and they went into the 4 directions of the world. And from there we get all the dogs. So these are the 3 true dogs, the original ones. And from there we get all the rest of them. And this is how we came, as I tell my students, this is how we get all the RASC dogs. All those crazy dogs running around in the reserve. So that's where we get them from, they say. So there's Mayagan the wolf, Polaris, Yulden, Mistatsaganese, and Epsilon, Magasu the fox. All these paintings that you see, these depictions are done by a man named Edwin Biggity, who lives in a small isolated community in northern Manitoba. I gave him the stars, I gave him the mythology, and then he did his own interpretations of it. Did an awesome job. This one here is called Atchakosuk, Atchakosuk. Atchak is the fisher. This here was the very first story that I ever came across. And this was given to the people by a man named Murdo Scribe from Kinnisewashipi in northern Manitoba. Norway House, they call it, at the northern tip of Lake Winnipeg. And this is the story he told. He told the kids this story. And from this story, we started getting all the other stories. So this is the Big Dipper again, right here. Handle comes like this. And this legend says at one point, there was no summer in this part of the world. All northern Canada was covered in snow. And so Atchak and some of his buddies got together and they said, you know, we're tired of being cold. We're tired of digging through snow for our food. We're tired of tracking and running through blizzards and hiding. And we heard there's summer down south. Somebody come and told us there was summer down south. So I think those birds did. They said they came back and they said, you know, there's summer down there. There's summer. And it's never cold down there. It never snows. So we want to go down there and we want to see if we can get trade for some summer. Bring summer back for us. So him and his buddies, they took off and they went down south. They got down south and they found where summer was. So they went to those people that were keeping summer and they asked if they could have some summer because they needed it, because they were cold. Everybody was getting cold. Everybody was cold. Everybody was tired of being cold. So the people said, no, we are not going to give summer away because we don't want to be cold. So Atchak, he got mad and he went away and he was with his buddies. And he said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go get some summer. We're going to wait till they sleep. And we're going to go in that lodge where they keep that summer. And we're going to grab a piece of it and we're going to take off, he said. So that's what he did. He went to the lodge where summer was kept and he was going to take the whole thing. But then there was a noise and they heard him, Atchak was in that lodge where summer was kept. And so all those beings come after him. So he just grabbed a piece of it and he ran. So when he got back here, all he had was a little chunk of summer. And so he's the one that we can blame because it's cold up here for most of the time. So he brought some summer back for us anyway. And so some anthropologists heard the story and they thought that it's actually a living memory when there was actually no summer in this part of the world. Something called the Ice Age. And there's a lot of legends when they retell them, the anthropologists sort of tie them to an actual physical evidence in our history. So Atchak, Atchakosuk, the Fisher Stars. This is part of the weasel family, the marten, the mink. So this one here again, this is the Big Dipper, and this is Mistamaskwa. Mistamaskwa is the great bear. And this being here up in the sky, this mythology talks about what happens when beings abuse their power. Sort of like a bully. When people push their weight around, they know they're big, they know they're tough, and they push their weight around and scare people, scare things. So this story encompasses Mistamaskwa, Tepagupaneshisak, the 7 birds, Mama Aski, Mother Earth, the Big Dipper, Corona Borealis, and the Earth. the Big Dipper, Mr. Muskwa. Here's Tepegupaneshisak, the 7 birds. And in the mythology, these are the 7 birds that were given the job of hunting down that bear. You'll hear the story. Could we highlight that? Here we go.
So this story concerns the asterism known as the Big Dipper. For a lot of First Nations people, this story represents various animals. And the foremost among them is the big bear. And then the Cree language is called Mr. Muskwa. The legend talks about what the wages of being a bully are, and how even the littlest of animals can bring down the most ferocious. The way the story goes is that long ago there was a big bear which roamed the country. And this bear was the hugest, of course, biggest, the meanest, and therefore it did what it wanted to do. It preyed on everybody, every spiritual being on the face of earth. And this went on for years and years. The bear stole winter supplies, ripped up camps, killed spiritual beings, killed the animals, killed humans. And so one day, all these beings had a big meeting, and they decided that they were tired of being afraid of this bear. And so it was decided that the bear would have to go. 7 hunters were chosen, 7 of the best trackers and 7 of the best shots. Small birds were sent to do away with this bear. They went hunting for the bear, but the bear was forewarned by the raven and the crow that there were hunters after him. And so the bear, upon hearing that he was being hunted, took off, and the birds chased him. And the way the elders say is that the chase was on, and it went around the world 4 times. It circled the globe. And on the 4th time, they were going so fast that they came up over the horizon, and they flew into the air. This happened to be just around September, October. And as they flew into the air, the bear saw that the hunters were gaining on him, and he was getting tired, so he turned and he faced his attackers, his hunters. And just as he did that, one of the lead birds got a shot and mortally wounded that bear. So that bear was bleeding profusely as he stood and faced his hunters. And he shook, just like a dog shake when it's wet. And as he shook, all the blood he was bleeding fell to the earth and landed on all the broadleaf plants. So that's why I always say that in around September, October, all the leaves change color because of the blood of that bear. They also go on to say that when that bear shook, a droplet of blood hit that lead bird, the one that shot the bear right in the chest. And today he has a red breast. And for the Cree people, they call that bird Pipichel, the robin. And that's why the robin today has a red breast. And so they got rid of that bear to forever warn everybody about the wages of being a bully and about abusing your power. That big bear was put in the sky. And also to honor those 7 birds, they placed those birds in the sky, right in front of that big bear. That lead bird, Pipichel, is the brightest star in that constellation. And that Pipichel, the robin, was also given a special egg. And that egg represented the color of the sky. And on that egg, there were speckles to represent Atchakosuk, the stars. And that's why our elders always warned the children never to harm a robin, because it's a special bird. It's a creator's bird. And that is the legend of Mr. Muskwa, the big bear.
So this video was done in collaboration with a man named Peter McMahon, the wilderness astronomer, and we both collaborated on doing that, along with students from a reserve just east of Winnipeg, northeast of Winnipeg, called Saugeen. So they made all those masks, and they, in the middle of the night in summertime, they built a big fire and they put their masks on, and Peter kept making them repeat, going over, keep having kept shooting, because he didn't like the way it was going. And in the meantime, all these kids were getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. They weren't too impressed with Peter. So this year is, what did I do with that? Of course, the Northern Lights. When they're still like this in the sky, we call them Mawatewan. Wawa te win. And when they're dancing around, and sometimes they even make static, they're called ti paik nemi to win, which means the spirits are dancing when they're in motion. And sometimes you just fill the whole sky. And like I said, sometimes in the nighttime, if you're outside in the wintertime, you could actually hear the static that's produced. And this, of course, is our sun. My people call this Piisim. Anishinaabe and Ojibwe people, they call it Gizans. And again, there's a lot of references to this, depending on, like in the Sundance ceremony, they call it Kisikumanato, the day spirit or light spirit. Got the way of Piisim, smothered, a shadow smothering the light. This, of course, is a solar eclipse. Wabiye, so this is a full moon. We call this the Piskawe Piisim. Anishinaabe say the Bigigizes. A lot of stories about the moon. Of course, every culture has a story about the moon because every culture on the face of the earth saw that moon. Therefore, there's all kinds of stories about it. My people look at that moon, and one of the things they see is a little boy that sits on the moon. And this ever reminds us of how orphans, children with no parents, no families, how they should be looked after. This is what this reminds us of. So if you look right here, you can see the head of Atchakosuk right here. Here's his neck, one leg, one arm comes like this. Here's a pail of water he's carrying. He has 2 pails of water. So there's one pail of water right there, another pail of water right there, and he's standing right there. You see, it looks like he's got a cap on, looks like he's got a belt on, looks like he's got a backpack on. He's ready to go. The way the story goes is that something happened to Atchakosuk's family, and all his family was lost. And he was sent to live with people that didn't really want to look after him, but they took him in anyway. And he was made to do all kinds of jobs, all kinds of dirty work. And he was always underfed, underclothed, and he felt very unloved. And so one night, in the middle of the night, he was asked to go to the lake and get 2 pails of water. So he went out to the lake, and he got 2 pails of water, and it happened to be a full moon, so he was standing there looking at that moon, and he was crying, and he was telling Grandmother Moon how lonesome was, how scared he was, how hungry he was, how hurt he was, how unloved he felt. And so Grandmother Moon felt sorry for him, and she took him up in the sky to live with her. So he's up in the sky. In a full moon, you can see him up in the sky there all the time. And I guess it's a forever reminder of how we should look after the ones that need looking after. So this is, of course, a waxing moon. You can get a good piece of Atchakosuk right there. The waxing moon this year, this year is like a shrinking moon. Oh, now I did it. What did I do?
Press the... Chris, can you fix it?
Oh, here we go.
You may have to go back and forward.
Oh yeah, so this is Atchakosuk. So there's the shrinking moon, the waning moon. Here's Miskosta Saugason. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was in one of the communities and talking about this, and one of the elders looked at that and said, "There's another name we call this," and they said, "This is God's fingernail." And I thought that was pretty cool. Waskagosin. This term means like this is the new moon. The new moon. And of course, there's the man in the moon. Sagapeo. So this year is a medicine wheel. This particular one is in the Bighorn medicine wheel in Wyoming. There's all kinds of medicine wheels all over the plains. Another famous one is in Moose Mountain, Saskatchewan. And these, our elders say, is a living calendar. This is a calendar. We use this as a calendar. These mounds on the outer edge and the one in the center and the spokes, these line up in the morning and the evening with stars, with the moon, with planets. And they're the ones that told us when it was time to move camp, when it was time to hold ceremony, when spring arrived, when winter arrived, when fall arrived, when summer arrived. So this was our calendar right here. And this was representative of a turtle, because prior to the coming of the Europeans, we went by a lunar calendar. And our lunar calendar was comprised of 13 full moons. So if you looked at a turtle shell, the elder said, on the outer edge of a living turtle shell, there's 28 sections. Those 28 sections represent 28 days from one full moon to the next. And the inside of the turtle shell, there's 13 sections, representing 13 full moons of one complete cycle. So when we looked at that, we were reminded of our living calendar. And like we said before, what is above is mirrored below. We tried to do that, try to keep that in balance. This was from Black Elk, Lakota. So if you look at this, this is part of Lakota people mythology. And you can see the Milky Way runs right through here, and there's a sacred hoop with 7 stars make up that sacred hoop. For the Lakota people, this here is a natural geographical area in the northern states. If you look right here, at number 9, the Lakota people call this the Bear's Lodge. This is a place in northern Wyoming, a mountain called Devil's Tower in northern Wyoming. And it was very sacred to the Lakota people. And then over here, this is Eagle Butte in Montana. And here there's families that are assigned to follow this sacred hoop around and hold ceremonies at these 7 spots throughout the year. So when it's springtime, they arrive at Eagle Butte and they go on top of that mountain. And they look to the east. And at the east, just before the false dawn comes, Pleiades is the last group of stars that's seen, and that signifies that it's springtime. And then over here, this is in Minnesota. So you have Wyoming over here, you have Montana, you have Minnesota, and these are the Dakotas, and up here is the Yellowstone. This point right here, this is a sacred mountain right outside of a town called Sturgis in South Dakota. This is Bear Butte. They say Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, a lot of the great chiefs fasted on that mountain. Every year people make pilgrimages to this place, and a lot of them still fast for 4 days, 4 nights without food and water, crying for direction. So this is for the Lakota, and right at the heart of it all is the Black Hills, Baja Sapa, the homeland of the Lakota people. So again, what is up there is mirrored down here. And they say this is part of the white buffalo, this whole thing right here. Tatanka. That's my Dances with Wolves Lakota. Oh, Tatanka wachielo. Hey, that's all I know. So we did that already. So this, what you've seen here is just a glimpse of some of the mythology my people carry. And this is only my people, the Nino. And the Anishinaabe have their own mythologies. Lakota people have their own mythologies. The Blackfoot peoples, all people throughout the Northern Hemisphere have their own mythologies. And in closing, I'd like to sing a song, if I'm allowed to.
Yes.
No, I mean my grandfather, they won't let me sing a song. Okay, we'll sing a song. We'll sing a closing song. This song is like just to let us know that we're never alone. No matter what we do, we're never alone. There's always somebody watching us. What we're told is that whatever we do, however we carry ourselves, however we speak, when we speak, that first of all, we should acknowledge where we're from. We should acknowledge who we are. We should acknowledge our nation we come from. And I try to do that every time I speak. And they also say that when you speak, try as best that you can to speak the words that are truthful. Because once these words leave these lips and they go out into the universe, they can never be taken back. So when you're speaking with children especially, you have to be very mindful of what you say. Because you are the connection to the future, and you are the connection to the past. They say you, right now, hold influence over 7 generations. 3 to the future, 3 to the past. To the future, you have your children, you have your grandchildren, and you have your great-grandchildren. And in the past, you have your parents, you have your grandparents, you have your great-grandparents. So those great-grandparents, great-grandchildren, we call them Tsapan. Tsapan is the ones that bind together. Tsapan, our grandchildren, bind together the future. Tsapan, our great-grandparents, bind together the past. And we are that connection. So we want those people in the future to be strong. If we want those people to be respectful, if we want those people to be kind in the future, then the message that we give those 3 generations in the future has to be a strong one, has to be a powerful one. So I want to thank you for listening, and I'll sing this song. Hey, hi, hey, hi, hey, hi, hey, hi, hey, hi, hey, hi. Estemet maleto Sana wena milan Santo yisdao Hey ya ya ho Hey yo hey hey ho. Thank you. Do you want to have a brief
questions, I'm sure.
brief question and answer, yeah.
Okay, we have some time for some questions. Maybe Wilfred, I'd like to start off with a question. So maybe you said it and I missed it. When you talked about how when the big bear was wounded, okay, the blood came down and it colored the leaves. So is this something that is a seasonal thing?
Yes, it is.
So how is that again?
Well, the way the mythology goes is that when the birds chase the when the birds chase the bear, and they circumnavigated the globe 4 times, and the 4th time they flew up in the sky, and the birds were close enough to the bear to get a shot at him. And this happened to be around the end of September, beginning of October. And so the bear was up in the sky, he was beating profusely, and he shook just like a dog shakes. And when he did that, all the blood fell to the earth and landed on all the broadleaf plants. So that's why all the broadleaf plants change color, because of the blood of that bear. So every fall time that happens.
All right, very good.
So other questions? Chuck?
Yeah, I find your legend of the bear is fascinating in 2 aspects. First of all, Greek mythology, the Big Dipper was a bear.
Mm-hmm.
And the name for that was Atchakosuk, which is very similar to your name.
Atchakosuk, yeah.
Now, I guess my question is this legend was a pure pre-European?
Yes, it was, yeah.
It was, eh? So
yeah.
basically it was a coincidence from 2 different parts of the world.
Yeah.
Almost the same.
Yeah. And the other thing about that is not only that from First Nations, they have a similar story. Like this story is Cree mythology when I first heard it. But I had a chance to be up in Cape Breton, member 2 reserve in Cape Breton, the Mi'kmaq people, and I was talking about this legend. What that feedback?
You have to step behind the podium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come back here. We'll do away with that.
This one here is the one.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Testing.
All right, let's go ahead.
Yeah, so I happened to be in Cape Breton, and I was telling this legend with some Mi'kmaq people, and then after I finished talking about it, a couple of the elders came up and they said, we have the same legend, we have the very same legend you have. You talk about that Big Dipper as the bear, and we see it that way also. But the only thing different about it is that the birds that are involved in that legend, the birds are the birds in our area. The majority of them are seabirds. And so, but the mythology and the teachings behind that are exactly the same.
The
So it's,
connection is fascinating.
yeah, it is.
I think there's a question in the back, Rick.
Yeah, was any of this tradition written down? Was there any kind of written history, or was it all an oral passing on of the story?
Well, initially it was all oral, the passing down of the stories, and a lot of the stories that I've gathered, they come from mythologies. Like we have a trickster in our mythology called Wisagaitzak. And Wisagaitzak is identified as Orion in the night sky. And the Anishinaabe know him as Nanabush. The Blackfoot call him Nape. And he has various names throughout North America. He's the coyote, the raven, he's all those things. And so the, I guess, I forgot the question. Sorry about that.
I just wondered if it had been written down in the early days, or was it?
Oh yeah, right. Okay, sorry. The oral history. So all these things were passed down, and just recently that I started recording these. But when I initially got them, I had to listen to the story, because they don't initially tell you. You see that star up there? We're talking about that star. They just tell you a story, and from that story, you have to identify what it is they're talking about, and then you have to identify the star that it is that they mean. Like there's some of them that are very obvious, like when they say Kiwaitan, they talk about Kiwaitan. Kiwaitan is the North Star. One of the names they have for it is Ekagaatset. Ekagaatset means it stands still. And that's the only star that, of course, stands still in the sky. And that's how they found their directions. So there's a lot of things that have to be translated and inferred. Hope that answers your question. Yes.
Okay, Laura, let me give you the mic.
I enjoyed your talk very, very much. I'm very honored that you came to speak to us tonight. I've worked with the Aboriginal people in education for the last 10 or so years, working on culture, especially archaeoastronomy. I implore you, please write a book of this. It's needed. Nobody else has one. Also, you have a wonderful talking and speaking voice. If you could narrate this like on CD or whatever, it would be a great benefit. I'll be one of the first to line up to buy a copy for sure. Thank you so much, and please write it all down.
Thank you. I've begun. I've got about 4 stories written down so far. The thing about that is that once I think I have enough stories to go, some more come. So it just keeps getting.
I would certainly agree with that as well. I noticed when you opened your lecture, you thanked the Creator for your being here. Interestingly, when I was driving up to the museum here, I was thanking the Creator as well for being here as well. So we certainly are kindred spirits that way. But interesting, the similarities that you see in the sky are very similar to cultures around the world. Notice about the dog stars and so on. Science has recently proven that all dogs on the earth today, that the pet dogs, whether they be big or small, they are all genetically related to the gray wolf. Just as you mentioned there, and I wonder how you knew that, 1,000 years ago, but it's just recently been proven that all dogs are related to the gray wolf. And going back that far, do you have any history, like in my biblical Christian tradition, all the races of the world came from the Middle East through Noah and the flood and through Adam and Eve. Do you know how far back your culture sees the origin of the human race and the zodiac and the stars? Can you give us an estimate as to how far back this goes?
Well, when we talk about, I guess, the Genesis mythology, we talk about Gishiku and Atchakosuk, Star Woman, and how she arrived. And we don't really put too much emphasis on when. We're thankful enough that we're here. And we were given a responsibility, so. Hope that answered your question.
Other questions? Okay, how do I do it? Can we pass this mic?
Pass it back when you're done.
My question is I'm just curious, in the story with the little boy, does the bad adoptive parent get punished after?
Does, no, it doesn't, no. No.
Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't elaborate on that.
Hi, thank you for the talk. Oral tradition, is it passed down through music or just verbally? In other words, are these things set to song?
Oral tradition is more than just oral tradition. It's what the elders say is it's how you carry yourself. You can tell a story, but if you don't live the teachings of that story, then that story doesn't go too far. So the elders say that when you tell a story, like I was saying before, words are very sacred. Song is very sacred, and those things make up the reality of a child. Those stories that you tell. So,
okay, thank you.
Oh, somebody's beeping here.
Any last questions? All right. Well, thank you very, very much. Thank you so much. I have to say, I won't be looking at, when I see the Cassiopeia constellation anymore, and I'm not going to think the W is Cassiopeia, I'm going to think it's Wilfred. Brian, is that new to you? A little boy on the moon? You see many things on the moon, but...
I see lots of things on the moon, but ever that's why you can see what
So Brian, the fellow who asked you the question about the moon and or at least how knowledge is passed down, is orally and so forth. And he's a moon enthusiast, and he sees lots of things on the moon. So that one, I'm sure he'll carry forward with. Folks, before we go, thank you again. Before we go into break, I want to say a few things about for those of you who are here joining us for the first time. I'm going to take 1 minute to talk about the RASC and our center. So if you become a member in our center, we have lots and lots of benefits. Some of the things we have are a telescope loan library. You sign out a telescope much like you sign out a book. We have an observatory that is available to members as well. With membership, you get every 2 months Sky News magazine, and also the RAC publishes a journal. There's a wonderful handbook that comes as well with it, an observer's handbook. And our center also publishes its own Astronomy, which is a bulletin on it's more around our center's activities and the things our members do. Membership is, as you see here, adult membership is $75. There is a nice family membership. If you are interested, let me know. At break time, I can explain you all about it. You sign up on the rasc.ca website. Okay, if anyone has any questions, approach me, or I'm sure there are many people here who can help you to sign up. We have a ton of things that we do. Other than these meetings here, we organize star parties, public stargazing sessions, and fingers crossed, we have one scheduled for tomorrow in Carp. We'll be talking about that a little bit later on. We have discounts for Sky and Telescope and Astronomy magazine. It goes on and on and on. And I think we're a fairly active center. We organize a lot of activities. All right, terrific. So let's proceed for the second half of the meeting here. First up is Dave Chisholm, who's going to talk about Ottawa skies. And by the way, he's got a terrific presentation lined up for next month. He's going to talk about a recent trip to the Algonquin Radio Observatory. So I've seen his slides, and I think that's a real must-see presentation. So over to you, Dave.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I will keep this brief because I know we got some really cool images coming up here. Let's take a look at our moon phases for the month of October. Full moon is on October the 27th. We have some meteor showers coming up this month. The Draconids are coming up on October the 8th. Unfortunately, the second quarter moon is going to be competing with them, and given there's only 10 per hour, your probability of seeing them is pretty low. But if you're up for the challenge, October the 8th, and the better one would be the Orionids, October the 21st, 20 per hour. After midnight, the moon will have set, and you will be much better off in terms of seeing them. Does anybody know which meteor created the Orionids? Any guesses? Halley's Comet. Sorry, I'm seeing all the buttons here. In terms of the planets this month, Mercury is not visible. It's up during the daytime. Venus is now visible early in the morning, rising at 3:22. And just before sunrise on October the 26th, there's going to be a 1 degree conjunction with Jupiter. Mars is also visible early in the morning, and there's going to be a rare conjunction with the planets Venus and Jupiter later on in the month. And Jupiter is now visible early in the morning, and just before sunrise, October the 26th, there's going to be a 1 degree conjunction with Venus, and a rare conjunction with Venus and Mars in the early morning of October the 28th. Be interested to see if anybody can get some pictures of those ones. Saturn is visible all month, setting at 8:58 out to 7:09. Uranus is visible all month, rising at 7:04 to 5:03. And it's at opposition on October the 11th, and Neptune is visible all month. International Space Station best viewing is this Wednesday, October the 7th, and it's at a reasonable hour, 7:46 in the evening. And it rises to 59 degrees, so it should be clearly visible. Here's what the path looks like. So it almost goes fully across the sky. And my closing cartoon, daylight savings time starts November 1st. And I actually visited Stonehenge this summer. I can just imagine them trying to shift this to the right one. Thank you very much.
So Dave, if you visited Stonehenge, why aren't we seeing some photos here? Come on.
Okay. Later.
Okay. All right. Terrific. Thanks. Next up is Pierre Martin, Perseids meteor shower report. Pierre.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. So, yes, about the Perseids. So I haven't exactly had as much time as I normally do for observing this year. It's been a busy year for me, but I was, I absolutely did not want to miss out on the Perseids, which is my favorite meteor shower, along with the Geminids. And it's always one that's really enjoyable because of the time of the year, really comfortable to be out observing. And it's also a really nice meteor shower. It's a time of the summer where it starts to be a little cooler nights, so you don't have as many of the mosquitoes or the humidity. So it's quite a pleasant time to be out, and it's also a great shower to. There's always lots of nice bright meteors. Hard to go wrong with that. So a bit of a recap on the Perseids. It's one of the main meteor showers of the year, with a fairly strong annual maximum of around 80 to 100 per hour rates. And its association is with comet Swift-Tuttle, which last returned in the vicinity of the sun in the early 90s. And along with its return, it brought stronger than usual showers all the way through the late 90s. And observers who were in the right place, the right longitude on the planet, could see literally hundreds of Perseids per hour during the peak time. So now the comet is receding back into the outer solar system, so we're back into most years seeing the more typical 80 to 100 zenith hourly rate, which is the under ideal observing conditions in the high radiant overhead is the theoretical amount of meteors you would see from the shower. So as I said, the Perseids are often really bright and colorful, and during a good night of observing, you can typically see probably a few good fireballs along the way. So as we approached the maximum this year, August 12th, the skies over Ottawa were just not very good. The weather forecast was not very promising over Ottawa. There was this large low pressure system out east, and basically the clouds extended all the way over here. Like the boundary of clouds was really wide. Anywhere closer to Ottawa from that point onwards was pretty much clouded over. So, however, beyond this line, towards the west, it was really, really clear blue skies. So a few of us started discussing possibly doing a road trip. And as we got closer, we realized that the weather forecasts were generally quite stable. They were showing the cloud movements pretty much where they were showing on the previous forecast. So we decided, well, Shane Finnegan, Raymond Dubois, and I, let's go on a road trip. Let's just pack all our camping equipment and our cameras and give it a shot. So this is what we did. We drove west. We didn't really know where we were going along the way. We figured let's just go towards the clear skies. And the further we drove, the more we started questioning, well, is it actually going to clear? Because we were under 100% overcast skies, and there wasn't much sign of hope. But we stayed positive about it, and eventually, the further down we got, beyond Bancroft, started seeing a bit of openings in the sky. It looked a little more promising, and then between the clouds, the sky had this really crisp blue color to it. So finally, maybe around just past Bancroft or so, we found on the maps, and we recalled a place down here called the Balsam Lake Provincial Park. Over on the Kawartha Lakes, not too far from Lake Simcoe. And Shane mentioned that he had been camping there previously and that it was a nice place. So we figured let's give it a try and see what it looks like. It's still in a relatively dark zone with not much light pollution in this area, and it would put us into clear skies, which was what we were primarily hoping to find. So the question is, with the Perseids being an annual shower, why bother doing all of this effort and going so far? Why not just wait for the next year? Well, there's a number of reasons for that, and the Perseids in 2015 were really ideal for a number of reasons. First of all, dark moonless skies. Not every year you get to see Perseids under moonless skies, and that does make a big difference. You can see many, many more meteors. The peak time was also favorable for North America, right into the midnight or late hours in the pre-dawn morning. Third, there was the possibility of enhanced rates above the normal maximum. And a couple of the meteor experts had predicted that Jupiter would be basically doing another one of its push and pull on the stream and actually redirect the center of the dust stream closer to Earth's path. And when that happens on those years, and that happens every few years, but on this specific occasion, you get to see more meteors as the Earth goes into a more densely concentrated part of the stream. So that has resulted in elevating the rates slightly this year. And there's the possibility that next year that effect will be to its maximum. So that's the year that the rates are actually going to be the highest. The other possibility is the one revolution industrial. So basically the comet Swift-Tuttle does one orbit around the sun every 130 years or so. And the last passage in the 1800s, it left this dust trail, which is still fairly intact. And every once in a while, this is the one that we pass through, and we get occasional outburst for the Perseids. So Vaubayon had predicted that we'd be passing through this dust trail, only 80,000 kilometers from the Earth. And this would occur during the daytime hours for North America. So this is not an event that we were going to see. However, the broad normal maximum, the one that possibly could also be enhanced, was the one that was predicted into the late hours of the night for us here. So all this to say that it was worth a shot. So we decided let's do it and let's go for an adventure. So we got to Balsam Park, and here's our setup. So we decided to basically to compare a couple different areas on the site. We took a walk down to the beach and we saw a nice southern horizon there, which was quite appealing. But we decided to actually to come over and set up in a large, wide open parking lot, and the park staff was kind enough to let us set up there and told us basically could stay there for the night and there's no problem there. And this afforded us a nice wide horizon to set up and actually have our cameras and equipment right next to the car, which was also another bonus. And there's there's our cameras. So my setup was composed of this one in the middle of a Canon 6D and a 5D. So I had one aimed towards the radiant into the east. And what I did is I took a number of short exposures running throughout the entire night, tracking the same part of the sky with the radiant in view. The other camera, the 5D, was pointed towards the north. And what I hoped to be doing was I had it onto the direction of Ursa Major. And my hope was as that part of the sky was going to rotate towards the horizon as the night went on, then the camera would be peering through a thicker layer of the atmosphere and hopefully scoop more of the meteors into that area. As you look lower in the sky, quite often you get to see more meteors because basically you're just looking into a much thicker part of the atmosphere. So there's more, hopefully, that comes into view. So maybe for the shot, there's my composite of the radiant. So if we can actually temporarily turn off the lights and we'll get to see more details.
Can we turn off that light?
So the radiant here is, you can identify right over, this is the double cluster in Perseus. The radiant area is right over here. And there's several bright meteors that the camera caught. On this photo, there are approximately 99 Perseids. Actually, there are 99 Perseids. It's actually a shower that I managed to capture the most meteors. And we don't see them too well on this shot, but the streaks that are really close to the radiant, there's a number of really small ones that look like almost like star-like points, which are actually head-on meteors that are apparently coming directly towards us due to perspective. And then you can also notice some of the meteors, there's a color shift. They start typically green and then they turn yellow-orange. And this is the atoms of the atmosphere that are excited as the meteor plunges deeper into deeper layers of air. It'll excite different parts of the atmosphere and glow different colors. So the next shot, I'll just move forward here. This is a close-up on the radiant point. The same picture, but basically just zoomed in, so you can actually see some of the really short meteors a little more clearly. Now the laser pointer is a little dim on this one. Is there one on the other remote mic?
Yes, there is. It should be one right here.
Okay.
Actually, right there. Can we use this one?
Oh, yeah, that one's, I think the battery might be going on that one.
Okay. Turn off the battery.
Okay. I think it's fine, but thank you. So basically, this is a closer view. And the meteors that were captured were typically up to magnitude 3. The faintest ones on the pictures with this setup were about maybe mag 3. So what I did, this one was with the Canon 6D setup. Thanks a lot, Mike. And I'll just turn on the small light here. So yes, this was with the Canon 6D and a 35mm lens. And this was tracking the same part of the sky all night long. I took a number of short exposures while running the whole night. The exposures were 30 seconds at ISO 1600 and the lens at f2.2. And at one point during the night, I did one long exposure at 2.5 minutes, ISO 800 f4. And this was to get a crisper image on the stars and the Milky Way with a bit less noise. So the Perseids really produced quite a beautiful show that night. So as we were setting up our cameras and getting ready for viewing, we were already seeing like a number of really long, bright meteors casually. And what I noticed also is the public was also impressed. I had a number of people come by just to have a casual look. A number of them walked down to the beach. And as I was setting up my camera, I can recall a number of times where I would hear like, "Oh, wow, wow," and some pretty loud shouts. So I knew it looked like it was a good show. And this was, even with the radiant low in the sky, the Perseids were already kicking into high gear. So the best hour was actually between 2:30 and 4:30, when I recorded visually 110 meteors. And out of those, 93 were Perseids. The other were sporadics or members of other active minor showers. And I viewed formally from midnight to 5 a.m. So I took my time before signing on to visually look for meteors, because I knew that once I was in my lawn chair, all comfortable with the sleeping bag, chances are I would not want to come out too often, just because I get really caught into watching. And it's when you get a good show, you want to miss the less possible. The brightest Perseid, I'll move to the next shot and talk about this one in detail in a short bit. Thank you. So the brightest Perseid was a -6 that we saw just shortly after 1 o'clock. It was really nice. It was big, it was bright, and I liked it. It was a long 50-degree fireball that was seen really high up, and it went from Pegasus to Aquila, and then had a terminal flash near the end. Left a 30-second train. So that was really the highlight Perseid of the night. However, the most beautiful meteor, in my opinion, was one of the last ones that I saw right at the end of the night, just before 5 o'clock in the morning. It was actually a Capricornid. It was a slow, yellow, and just graceful meteor that it Earth grazed. It went like a really long path, lasting several seconds, from Cetus to Taurus. But just really nice. I was able to keep my eyes on it for several seconds as it went, so had a really good look at it. And as far as the Perseids, the other highlight was seeing a good number of them near simultaneous, and 19 instances where I had 2 or 3 Perseids happening really close together, like one after another, or in some cases simultaneously. But then there would be times where we would wait several minutes between meteors, so they don't always happen on cue. There's always a little bit of variability depending on when you're looking and how alert you are during the night. But also it's just a randomness of the shower. It never occurs right on cue. You could spend several minutes without seeing anything, and then you'll see a few in a closed time period. So this picture was done with my Canon 5D and a standard 15mm lens, f1.4. So this was the one I was mentioning earlier that's tracking on Ursa Major. You see some of the stars. This is the bowl of the Dipper, and then the tail over here. And this managed to capture quite a few meteors because it was really scooping really low towards the horizon. And another thing, you can see a little bit of a greenish glow here, which was a very faint aurora that was active. Did not notice it visually, but the camera certainly picked it up, and on several pictures I can see the change of the glow moving back and forth. Now as I mentioned, the sensitivity again, the faintest meteors on this shot are probably in the neighborhood of magnitude +3. The brightest one that you see here, this was a mag -4 fireball that was seen earlier in the night. And it was before I signed on for my formal watch. I was setting up the cameras and I started taking exposures, saw the fireball, and the camera picked it up. But what is really interesting about it is it's unusual. You don't really see it too well here, but the unusual appearance is you can see that half of the trail is really blue-green, and then the other half is white. And I believe what happened is the camera shutter opened up as the meteor was actually passing already. So it captured this part of the visible meteor, and what's glowing behind it is actually the afterglow that the camera picked up after the meteor had vanished. And it left a really bright afterglow that was visible for several seconds afterwards. So it just made for an unusual appearance on this one here. So the next slide, here's the results from the International Meteor Organization. It's based on worldwide observations that they gathered. This shows over data from over 34,000 Perseids. So as you can see, the Perseids typically start around mid-July, very low rates, only a few per hour or so. And then as we approach the peak time, it starts to ramp up really quickly, and then we get the peak on August 12th. And then following the peak, the rates actually drop fairly sharply. And by August 22nd or so, there's not too much left at that point. And here's where it gets interesting. This is a close-up view, basically looking at the peak over here, but in detail, from August 11 to August 13. And the predicted time for the peak, the traditional peak, would be represented right over here. So this is nighttime, so 6 UT, which is the equivalent of about 2 o'clock Eastern time. So this is the smooth peak that we were able to observe, and which would explain why the Perseids were really excellent this year. As far as the prediction from Beauvaillant, that I was mentioning a bit earlier, the One Revolution trail that we possibly could encounter earlier, this seems to be represented here. It seems to be definitely a peak. Not a very strong one, but there's certainly a bump here, which otherwise you would see a more smooth rise towards the traditional maximum. And then we have maybe a possible structure here and here, not as much data. And where you have gaps in between is probably the longitudes where you don't have much observers, either the oceans or just we don't have much data. But with the Perseids, we can really get more information than other showers just because of the sheer number of observers who are typically out to observe. And here's like a Mont du Bois, so along our way, you just never know what we might be able to find.
I want a photo of that.
So now we're going to give a bit of a preview on what's coming this month for the active showers. There's 2 active showers that are possibly quite interesting, the Orionids and the Torrids. The Orionids are going to peak around August 21st. And this is typically a moderate shower. It's not as active as the Perseids by a long shot. Typically, you were looking at rates of 15 to 20 per hour. And the shower is associated with Comet Halley. So the meteors are typically on the faint side also. However, between 2006 and 2009, there was a definite increase in the rates visible. And observers around the world reported seeing around a meteor per minute, which is really high for this shower. And it also included a lot of bright meteors. And one of those that I managed to photograph in 2007 was a spectacular fireball that lit up a good part of the sky. So there's a theory that seems to be partly confirmed that there's a 12-year period of activity for the Orionids. And right now, if this is true, this means that right now we're probably in the downward slope, or we're probably quite at the lowest point in this period of activity. So nothing is expected to be unusual this year, but we never know. As with all meteor showers, anything is possible. The other neat thing about the Orionids is, although they have a published maximum of October 21st, it's actually a plateau of activity. So between October 21st and 24th, you can typically see a good number of meteors. Anytime after 2 o'clock in the morning, between 2 and 6, when Orion rises and the radiant gets higher up in the east, is actually the best time to be out to check them out. And of course, try to get under dark skies if you can. It makes a big difference. So the moon won't pose much of a problem this year. It's the first quarter, which will set in the middle of the night just as the radiance starts to rise. So it's one of those showers where you definitely get benefit from watching it late at night. Now the other thing I want to talk a little bit more of is the Torrids. Now this is a shower that's not often talked about, and it's one that's normally very weak on the low side. People will typically not pay much attention. And but it's got a few points, and it's got a few even tantalizing aspects that this year I should let you know, that you should be aware. And the Torrids are active very broadly. They don't have a sharp maximum. They're active for several weeks, and they're actually active as it is now up until late November, and always typically produce a few meteors per hour. So they are associated with the comet Encke. But what observers have noticed with this shower over the years is that there seems to be years where there's an increase in the numbers of fireballs that the shower produces in quite a big way. So there's a theory that one of the astronomers have tried to explain why every 3 years or so, or 7 years or so, there's this increase. And it's David Asher. David Asher, he's one of the well-known astronomers who refined the dust trail theory for the Leonids in the late 90s. And he was really, really successful in predicting the series of outbursts and meteor storms for the Leonids, and worked on a number of other meteor showers thereafter. So the Torrids is one that he decided to look at more closely with this study just a few years ago, and realized that there's a very likely possibility that there's a resonance happening within the Torrid dust stream. And this resonance is in sync with Jupiter, so it's they say it's a 7-2 resonance. In other words, that for every 2 rotations that Jupiter does, the Torrids do 7 rotations. So it creates a gravitational resonance that apparently keeps some of the larger meteoroids in sync in their orbit, closely bunched together. And in some years, the Earth will pass through that area, and we'll get to see the increase in fireballs. So the interesting aspect is that this year is supposedly a very good year for a swarm of fireballs, which would make it very similar to what happened in 1954. So the position of the Earth should be deep into that swarm of fireballs, just as it was in 1954, which would create a very interesting year. So on the year that's active, that means that every hour you could see possibly 4 or 5 large fireballs. And in the case of the Torrids, oftentimes you're talking very large fireballs, so this would make it very noticeable. So there's a few quotes I want to just read out from experienced observers over the years. Strong Torrid activity has been noticed in 1981 especially, and more recently in 2005. That was the last strong swarm year. So from Paul Jones, he quotes, I would like to add that the amazing Torrid fireball of 1981 as further evidence of this cycle. That year I recall seeing at least 3 or 4 Torrid fireballs an hour almost all night long. Nothing like it in my meteor memory save the 1998 Leonids. And another experienced meteor observer, George Gliba from the US, also writes, I also recall seeing 3 or 4 Torrid fireballs an hour on a weekend night in early November 1981. The Goddard Astronomy Club had a star party at the Caroline Furnace Retreat in Virginia. It was not as many fireballs as the Great Leonid Bolide Shower of 1998, but I have never seen so many Torrid fireballs in one night. So there you have it. That could be an interesting year if it pans out as David Asher believes according to his model. So the last time it happened in 2005, there was a lot of the public had actually noticed these fireballs, and a lot of them actually was during Halloween. So the trick-or-treaters apparently were complaining that they were blinded by some of these flashing meteors from the Torrids. So there's a few interesting aspects also about the Torrids. So the swarm of meteors is probably nothing that was recently produced, but was actually formed over the course of thousands of years and shaped together by this gravitational bound by the Torrids and the planet Jupiter that kept the larger particles in sync. And if the swarm does happen, the best time to actually view it, despite the length of the shower, is from the last week of October into the first couple of weeks of November. So a few other tantalizing Torrid facts is there's an English astrophysicist, an expert on comets and cosmology, Dr. Victor Clubb. He suggested in 1992 that the Torrids probably actually contain a half dozen full-size asteroids whose orbits place them squarely right into the stream. So as opposed to most of the meteor showers that we know that are mainly composed by very, very small specks of dust and brittle material shed by comets, it looks like this stream of Torrids actually contains some much bigger stuff. 1 minute here. Okay. So the range of orbits would indicate that this fragmentation of objects in the stream was probably the result of a huge comet, something that measured in the order of 160 kilometers wide, like a giant comet that was originally in the solar system, entered into the solar system some 20,000 years ago. And then what happened is this giant comet became brittle and it desiccated about 10,000 years ago. So the comet Encke, the known parent comet of the Torrids that is visible today, comet Encke may actually be the largest fragment of this giant comet that was visible back at the time. A couple other interesting facts is the Tunguska event in 1908 in Siberia. There was a large comet or asteroid explosion in a remote area of Siberia, the largest impact in recorded history. We're talking about 15 megatons of energy, something that was in the order of 1,000 times larger than a Hiroshima bomb. This explosion or airburst flattened 2,000 square kilometers of trees, or 80 million trees. The interesting thing, and the reason I mentioned this, is that some astronomers believe that the object that caused this explosion was a chunk of comet that likely came from comet Encke, or the Torrids. It came from the right direction in the sky, and in the time of the year that the Earth actually passes through the daytime section of the stream, which is in June. So we pass through the Torrids twice a year, in November, around November, and also in June. So this is actually still being debated because some astronomers who went on expeditions in Siberia have found traces that would seem to suggest that this was more an asteroid-type object, not comet. However, we haven't found, what would indicate a comet is that we did not find an obvious crater in the area, just flattened out trees. So this is a question that's being debated, but it's really interesting to think that perhaps it was a piece of this giant past comet. So final tantalizing image is, and I will leave you with this picture. Not one of mine, but just one that I found that really made me think that, wow, like this, if these Torrids are really capable of producing some big stuff. And if you're around, keep an eye on the sky. If you're out observing around late October to mid-November, anytime in between, there's always a chance that you might see one of these big guys. Thank you.
In the interest of time, if people have questions for Pierre, if you could take them to Pierre right after the meeting. Pierre, thank you so much for sharing this once again. A lot of work, and would you agree that this is some of the finest images I think you've ever seen? I certainly think we're very fortunate to have Pierre share this. Okay, we got a lot of observation reports. Could I have Julia, Jim, Oscar, and all the observers that are showing images come up and line up on this side here, because we need to go through this fairly quickly, as I mentioned in my note. So let's start with Julia.
Okay, rather than me carry her, I'm going to bend this microphone over. Okay, you want to go? Okay.
I was looking through the observer's handbook and I saw the table of colored double stars, and I thought it would be cool to look at them. So Daddy and I went out with the telescope and looked at some of them. This is what we saw. Ormicon dragonis, primary is orange and secondary is lilac. Daddy got the colors wrong on this one. They should be the other way around.
On the next one. A second. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah, this is the one I got the colors wrong on. No, they're actually reversed.
The secondary was really hard to see.
Okay. Got it.
This one was really pretty. There were 3 different colors, orange, blue, and white. It was really cool to see a triple star. You probably know this one as Alberio. Most people see this as gold and blue, but I saw it as orange and blue.
Thank you. Thank you. Say thank you. Say thank you. Say thank you. Okay, we're done. Say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. You're welcome anytime. Wonderful. Terrific start. Jim.
Which button to advance?
Right button.
Right, okay, thanks. So this is a collection of images captured over the summertime. A lot of them are solar images, and I've kind of got a newfound love for observing the sun thanks to a new hydrogen alpha filter that I have for my refractor. This is one of the first shots with it taken in May. It was originally in red, that's the color of H alpha, that I converted to gray and then false colored it gold, just for fun. It was a nice day, lots of filament features and quite a few active regions. So that was a nice shot. Thank you. These next 2 shots are slices in time from first the eastern limb and then the western limb of the sun, taken from a beach during my summer vacation. I was on the beach drinking beer all day. I figured I might as well set the scope up and collect some captures while I was there. So these are all roughly an hour apart. Basically when I remembered to get up out of my lawn chair and go snap an image. But the reason I've presented it like this, side by side, is so you can see how the prominences change in time. And it can be quite dramatic, even in a short period. So you can see there's a larger prominence here, and it was constantly sending out these very thin streamers all through the day, some of them quite a bit brighter than others. And then down here was looping structures that was also constantly changing. Some of them were expanding out, getting further away from the surface, and others that were just kind of going back and forth. So I found that was pretty neat. And then similarly for the other limb, this blob here, prominence, it changed quite dramatically over the course of the day, as well as this interesting prominence here. It was fascinating to watch through the day and to try to understand what exactly was happening physically. And having done a bit of research online, I understand now that this isn't necessarily gas that's being thrown off and then just drifting into space. It's actually, hydrogen gas that's trapped in magnetic fields that are looping out of the surface. And so it can be moving back and forth. It can be getting heated up and cooling down, making it appear and disappear. So you can see it's quite bright here and almost gone here, but the gas is still there. It just gets re-energized and heats up again so we can see it again. And it's kind of going back and forth along the magnetic lines. So it's pretty fascinating to watch. And that's just all, you know, from the beach on the Ottawa River. So lots of fun. Okay, this shot was taken with a new camera that I just got recently. It's I've inverted the colors because it helps with the contrast, I find. And it was of a quite large prominence. It was on the 22nd. I don't know if you can see the bottom here. The 22nd of August, and I put an image of the Earth in there for scale. So quite large. And as I watched it through the day, it was just like a water fountain. Just like a water fountain. You could see it shooting up and raining down back onto the surface, which is pretty neat to watch. And then a similar shot from lower down on the same limb of an active region called 2403. I think they just number them, and as they come around, the next one gets the next highest number. But this one had lots of nice images taken of it. It lasted quite a long time, about a week and a half, 2 weeks, and just kept getting more and more complex. And I was lucky to catch a good shot of it, as well as some fairly large prominences down on the limb. So I was pretty happy with that shot. And then this is the first images I took with this camera, so I was pretty happy with how it turned out. The next day, I switched from hydrogen alpha to visible light. So this is with the same refractor, a 4-inch refractor, but instead of H-alpha, I put a Herschel safety wedge on, as well as a continuum filter. So it's a very narrow band green filter that really brings up the detail of the photosphere. So you can really see the granulation and the details in the umbra and the penumbra. So this was 4 times Barlow on a 4-inch refractor. So I thought that turned out quite nice. Again, the Earth added to scale there. And then the next shot was same day, same time, just with a different filter. This was a calcium K filter added to the same setup. So in this you can see a lot more of the intricacies of what's going on around the perimeter. Some of the macro granulation, they call it, so larger cells of convection with smaller cells inside. So I was quite pleased with that shot. And then the final shot was my first attempt to image the moon with my new camera.
Wow.
So this is one of my favorite craters. It just has so much complexity in it. Posidonius. It's sort of on the northeastern quadrant of the moon. And this was taken with a 10-inch Ritchie-Chrétien scope with an IR high-pass filter on to help with the seeing. The seeing actually wasn't that great that night. But yeah, I was quite happy with the way that turned out. Especially this squiggly rill here is very hard to catch, just because it's so small. Similarly, the other rills that go through the middle here. So quite a fascinating crater. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and thanks for letting me bump you last time to this meeting here. Boy, Mike Wirfs, if you're watching, this is quite impressive. Okay, next up is Oscar.
Thank you, Mike. Hey everyone, so I haven't presented an image in a while, so let's see if I still remember how. So this is an image I took of M45, or the Pleiades. I actually took this image exactly 2 years ago, the night of October 2nd, 2013, / morning of October 3rd. M45 is an open star cluster of of hot type B stars. It's actually one of the closest star clusters to Earth, at only 440 light years away. So this image is comprised of a total of 2 hours of integrated exposure times taken through my 80mm f5 apochromatic refractor using my Canon 60DA at 1600 ISO. Yeah, so that's it.
Thank you. Oscar, you got to be happy looking at that on the screen. It's beautiful on the projected on the screen.
Yeah, it looks good.
Well done. Okay, Hugo.
Yeah, this is a composite basically of a shot with a relatively simple camera outside my front door on a night of the eclipse. And originally I intended to take the shots at equal time intervals, but then from the clear sky, suddenly there appeared a number of clouds. So particularly the last half of these I'm waiting there nervously for a little gap through the clouds, and by eye it looks like, okay, there's a gap, there's a hole in the cloud, but when I look through the camera, you can see there's wisps of cloud over it, so you can't really get a clear picture. So it was a touch and go, and then as we got closer to totality there, it became more and more improbable. But the main thing I want to point out here is the incredible difference in brightness between when I shot the full moon to when it was almost in totality. There's a ratio of 400 times difference in exposure. And the second last picture that you see up there is I've got where you see the white crescent and then the reddish tomato-colored one below. The reason there's two of them, it's basically the same at the same time. One was taken at the original exposure with just the white crescent showing, and the other one I increased the exposure to 1 second so that you could see the reddish glow coming. And initially I was going to superimpose the two and try and get some detail of the cratering and so on. But the clouds came up, and pretty soon after that last image, it was totally clouded over, so I couldn't get anything more. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. Next up, Pierre. Thank you, Mike. So this is my first attempt to do a composite of a lunar eclipse. I set up with a 50mm lens, and I started beautifully with the partial phases, and my plan was to do the regular 5-minute exposures, one shot every 5 minutes, and then stack together, pretty much similar to how I do my meteor shots of it, putting them together to get everything on one picture. But I ran into a problem up there by the lighthouse as the clouds moved in. So then just before totality, that was it. I lost the sight of the moon completely behind clouds. I waited out. I thought I was going to be done for, that was it. I was going to have just the partial phases. But there was a tiny, tiny hole that popped in for a couple seconds. I had just enough time to capture the moon at the totality. And that was deeper into the eclipse. So from 9 o'clock to the bottom all the way to close to 11 o'clock. Or so, and I managed to get it 3 times before, then after that it became completely cloudy.
Where were you? What location?
That's at the Science and Tech Museum, right below the lighthouse there. So standard 50mm lens, and the exposure, I can certainly attest that there's a huge change in brightness of the moon. So from the beginning, I was using a 1/1000th of a second exposure at ISO 100. Probably about f8 on the lens,
And at the totality, I was up to ISO 800. And because of the clouds moving in, I had to bump up the exposure to a couple seconds or so. So really a big, big difference in brightness. And it certainly surprised me as well. And I found it was a darker total lunar eclipse than some of the recent ones we saw. So perhaps there was more volcanic ash or dust in the atmosphere. Thank you. Thank you, Pierre. Okay, I'm going to present Deborah Saravolos. She sent a couple of images for us. So she lives with Peter, and they moved to BC in Osoyoos. And they had a party, and at the party, the moon actually rose fully eclipsed. Okay, so what you're seeing here, of course, is the red color as a result of the red copperish color. That's a result of the longer wavelengths of light that are refracted through the atmosphere onto the moon. So beautiful shot, Deborah. Thanks for sharing. Last month, Chuck O'Dale shared some images from Deborah and Peter actually live in a region where there was a lot of forest fires here. So this is a very interesting shot with the obviously the Milky Way here and the teapot Sagittarius. So that's not steam from Sagittarius. That's something else. But they came actually very close to the forest fire, and thankfully there was nothing that happened to them. Okay, Raymond.
So how do I move the? Okay. So this is the beginning of the lunar eclipse. I was at Moose Creek, and I don't remember by heart exactly how the settings for the shot, but I think it was my 400 millimeter lens on a D300, so it was 1.5, about 600 millimeter lens. That was just after clouds went away on me. I was able to get that. That was during totality, and I was lucky. It started a bit clear, got cloudy. At totality, it cleared up at Moose Creek, and then after that, totality, the clouds came back in. So I was very lucky. I have exposed it a bit higher because I want to see more of the moon and also the background stars. A lot of Hipparchus that you can see in the background, and a lot of the Tychos also. This is after. So as you can see, the clouds moved in. I've slightly exposed, but I like is the rainbows that it got through the clouds. This is when I went with Pierre and Shane for the Perseids. So this is a view of about 17 or 20 millimeter lens. And you can just see it on the right-hand side, just slightly when near the sunrise. And this one was earlier in the evening. You can see some of the sky glow from Toronto itself. And that is because it didn't go through a little haze of clouds, but it did make a good effect because was a bit of dew on my lens. But it made a great effect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, folks, we're running about 12 minutes until we're at the end of the meeting here. Next up is Eric Lemay.
Okay, so this shot right here was an exercise in trying to get somebody to stand as still as they could for as long as I could. Yeah, this is at Starfest this year, and I just had the idea of getting Mike Dacey to stand up with the binoculars, and I took this shot of the Milky Way. It was a little difficult to process just because there's so much light pollution down at Starfest with the clouds and the haze that was there that night. So anyways, where's the
right clicker?
Yeah.
Right here, and the laser points here. The right button.
Yeah. Okay, so here is this was taken at Starfest again. Sorry.
Speaking of the microphone.
So this was taken at Starfest again, and this was the Saturday night when everyone had gone to sleep. There wasn't too many people left awake that night, but the the aurora started flaring up. So I grabbed my headlight, stuck it in someone's tent, and you could barely see the light from the headlight. But when I took the picture, it really it came out. If you guys could play the time lapse.
Hey, Chris, play the time lapse, please.
So it's only a few seconds long because it started pretty late at night, and so I didn't have too much time for that. But Chris, is there any way on the next time lapse to play it without the thing at the bottom?
Eric, you've got to speak up and...
Sorry.
I can't hear back here.
Is there any way you can play the next time lapses without the bar at the bottom?
Try.
Okay, thanks. Could you have the next image, please? Okay, the button's not. Here we go. Okay, so this is another time lapse here. I was out at Teeble's Hill taking a picture of the Cocoon Nebula, and all of a sudden the sky just lit right up. So I had my gear again ready for time lapses. I took this with the 5D Mark II and I think it was a 24 millimeter f1.4 lens. If you play that, please. Maybe if you double click on it, yeah, there we go. So these exposures were, I believe, 10 seconds long at ISO 3200.
Wow.
I don't recall seeing too many purples and greens and reds all together at the same time, so I thought that it was kind of neat.
Thanks, John.
And here's another shot from the same spot. This is a 180-degree panoramic shot. On the left, you can see the light pollution from Pembroke. In the center is from Ottawa, and on the right from Kingston. There's a total of 6 pictures from left to right that I took in portrait orientation and then stitched together. It was taken with a 14 millimeter lens at f2.8 with my 5D Mark II. And then I used a program called PT GUI to stitch it all together. If any of you want to attempt a panoramic, I highly recommend that program. It's really, really good. It makes it really easy to stitch things together. So here's another time lapse that I did. This one was with my 5D Mark II, 24 millimeter lens, f1.4, 30-second exposures, and I just let it run for a couple of hours. And you'll notice in a second or so at the top of the screen, the Andromeda Galaxy is going to come into view just as it starts fading to daylight. The one thing that really struck me about this is how many satellites were whipping through the field of view. Okay, so here's my image of the total lunar eclipse. Leading up to this, Paul Cloninger and I thought we were going to head southwest. Down near Foymount, we had picked a spot where we'd be able to see out over a lake, and I'd wanted to do a time lapse over that lake, have the mountains in the background and everything, and then clouds decided that they were going to show up. So we scrambled at the last minute. We went down to Upper Canada Village, and this is a shot as close as I could get to totality. Through my Explore Scientific 127 millimeter refractor. This was taken with my 5D Mark II. I believe it was 15 seconds. ISO 30. Actually, I think it was ISO 800. If I could have the next image, please. So this is then a combination of the various phases. And when I went to go put it together in Photoshop, I noticed that the I didn't expect the stars to appear so prominently on the two moons on either side of totality. So when I put it together, the stars all popped together, and so the three center moons are actually in the exact position that they would have been relative to each other. The moons on either end were just too bright and didn't have stars, so that's my best guess as to sort of where they were. If I have the next image, please. So now this is at Upper Canada Village, where I've got a new time-lapse machine made by Dynamic Perception, and it allows me to do motion during the time-lapse. So whereas before all the images were taken and they were all still, this one now has motion and it'll pan off to the right. This is starting right at the beginning of the eclipse. So whereas that looks like the sun, it's actually the full moon. And so this is starting off with exposures. They were 20 seconds long all the way through. I started off at ISO 200, and by about this point, I'm down to ISO 3200. The park ranger decided to pay us a visit a couple of times through the night, so that's what the flashes are on the monument there. It's pretty hard to limit that. So throughout the entire sequence, I had to keep on changing the exposure because the background lighting was changing dramatically. And when I put it back together, I was able to smooth out the transition. So that's all I get, or all I have tonight.
Well done, Eric. Wow. Okay, Paul.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I heard you had, for those of you that were confined to Ottawa, I heard you had a little bit of bad luck with the clouds there. We were panicking the night before the eclipse. As Eric said, we were going to originally head up to near Foymount, but all the computer models indicated that that probably wasn't a good idea. So Saturday, well, actually, early in the morning, we were checking the models, and we saw that if they came to pass, we'd have a good window of opportunity somewhere along the St. Lawrence from about Upper Canada Village up to Cornwall area there. So we decided to go up there, and that actually panned out really well for us. This is the full moon, the eclipse moon rising just before the eclipse. So just a few minutes before or after it actually came above the horizon, and you can see it's basically it's pretty bright there. It was a nice spot that afforded a view pretty close to, like, within a degree or so of the horizon. Next shot, please. So as you saw in Eric's time lapse, the full moon is pretty bright when you're exposing it like this, but you want to try to catch the foreground detail. This was a really nice spot right on the St. Lawrence River. And during the time when we were down there, we had 4 cargo ships passing through the river. I also shot some time lapses, but didn't have them ready for this month, so I'll show them next month. But you can see the cargo ships moving by as the moon was rising in the sky. So what I wanted to show you, this is about 15 or 20 minutes after the beginning of the partial phase. So most of the moon is still illuminated. Check out the clouds, the coloration of them. The next shot shows you the moon in full eclipse, and you can see it up there. And you can see the coloration of the clouds there. So even though the moon was quite dimmed, it was still casting enough light to illuminate the clouds, but at an obvious reddish tone. And in this particular image, I chose this one. I shot like 2,700 images. But in this particular one, this was right before, we got about, actually we were really lucky. We got into about 45 minutes of totality before our clouds moved in there. So we got more than half of the totality phase. We considered ourselves very lucky. And this shot is one of the last ones I got before the clouds really started moving in. And there's a bit of a cloud sitting over the moon right now, which acts as an additional filter. And you can see there's a kind of a red halo around it. So yeah, we were very grateful to the Creator for supplying us with a very nice night. So these shots. This one and the previous one, just taken with a camera with wide-angle lenses, 16mm wide-angle lens, giving me a nice wide field of view. Then the remaining shots are taken with a 70mm apo one of the new Skywatcher Star Adventurer mounts there. So I'll be showing that time lapse next month, as I mentioned. But a couple of frames from it. This again is just a few minutes before the onset of totality. You can see the details on the moon certainly, and a number of stars there. When you see this picture and the next one, you can see the stars will be in the same relative position. You can see the moon's motion during that interval of time. So actually, maybe you can flick that back and forth there, Chris. There, so and hopefully the time lapse will show that moon's motion through the star field during the course of the event there. But as I said, we really lucked out. We had really nice clear skies for the totality event, and allowed us to get a lot of really nice images. The last one I've got is this one. When the clouds moved through, I thought this is really funky when I was reviewing my images, because at this point the clouds were already fairly thick, and so this is a relatively long exposure of 8 seconds, I believe. And so what you're seeing there, that halo, is the clouds. They were moving through pretty quickly and giving this very streaked effect with the iridescence from the moonlight. You can see it as just coming out of just a bit of white light there, just coming out of the eclipse there, so enough to light up those clouds. And I thought it looked like a bit of an aurora. It was kind of cool. And actually, when I looked at the moon like that from a distance, I kept thinking, is that Mars or is that the moon? It reminds me of Mars. But anyway, had a great night there, and thanks again for the clear skies. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Okay, I think it's safe to say that if you missed the lunar eclipse, well, you really didn't miss it with all the observer images and videos. Thanks for everyone for sharing. Okay, let me wrap up fast. Okay, so we've got a couple of things. The annual RASC dinner is dinner tickets. We don't have the person selling the tickets here tonight, but if you want to get a ticket, you could. We'll take your name and come see Gordon at the front here. All right, he'll be right up at the front here. The speaker, of course, is this lady here who's an engineer and a robotics engineer at MDA, McDonald Detweiler Associates. Weather permitting, we'll have a star party tomorrow. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the weather forecast has changed from awful cloudy to maybe, I don't know. I'm going to make the call probably tomorrow afternoon. If we're going to have the public stargazing. It is in Carp. It's right beside. For those of you who don't know, it's right beside the Diefenbunker site.
Website. Put it on there.
And watch the website. We'll post the announcement on there. If it doesn't happen tomorrow, we have some backup dates, the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th successively if it's cloudy on each of those dates. Okay? So as Chuck said, it's also going to be on the website, the go, no go. Rob Dick, twice a year, invites everyone out to his place for this next weekend. So if you're interested in joining Rob for a dinner, Rob organizes a dinner and viewing and so forth. Please contact Rob. There's the email address, rdick at robbertdick.ca. Thank you, Rob. We have a book library here. Estelle is our librarian. Estelle picks out a selection every month. That's her recommendation. Okay. Some animation. So Gordon and Janet are running a course on art and astronomy. It's coming up at the Ottawa. It's at the Ottawa School of Art. And Gordon, when is it again?
23rd.
October 23rd.
Weekend of October 23rd.
So any questions? Gordon has a piece of paper here with some information. But you come see Gordon. I don't know if Janet, if you're here, or Janet as well. Next meeting is on November 6th, also starting at 7:30. We start at 7:30, and we're supposed to go to 9:30, so I'm going to try and keep it to 9:30 next time. The speakers I'm very pleased to have another special guest speaker, Ivan Semeniuk, who's going to be talking about the latest research on dark matter. I saw this presentation at the Calgary Center. I think I mentioned the last meeting in May, and I invited Ivan, and it's a pretty impressive presentation. I think you'll enjoy it. Dave Chisholm, I mentioned earlier, he also has a very impressive presentation on a recent tour that he did of the Algonquin Park Radio Observatory. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead quickly here. 128 people, wow, that's great. Welcome to everyone, and thank you for all the participants. There is an after-meeting social at Perkins, that's at Ogilvie and Saint Laurent, open to everyone, so please join us. And now, that closes the meeting here, so now I'm going to call